for those of you who don't know us, we're local. We're here. We have music studios here. When we talk about protecting and defending cities and counties in Washington, we live here. We care about what happens here. Our employees live around the state. When we talk about, so today we're going to talk about how to build your security program with federal grant funding, because Washington State is frankly ahead here and doing so much better job than other states. And so it's great to be able to talk about this. It's great to be able to see some old friends here, make new ones, as we do this. Look, there's the slide that I should have put up when I said that. So if you don't know us, what we do is we help Washington cities and counties prepare for a cyber attack, risk assessments, pen tests, and the like, detect one quickly, and respond decisively. And if that sounds something like the NIST CSF framework, there's a reason, and we're going to get to that. And what we do actually does a really nice job of aligning with what the feds and then the state are asking you to do. So you already know who we are. That's Mike. He puts Michael on the slide to be formal. I'm Jake Milstein. I run marketing for the company, host events, and prop him up.
And boss me around.
One of those two things.
Okay, all right, let's get going. All right, so yes, Washington is ahead. And I know this because I'm going out to Idaho to talk at their emergency management conference here coming up at the end of the month. And in prep for that, I was talking to somebody from their emergency management office, and he said, we just got our state plan in to get approved by CISA, and that was on the 29th of September. And the deadline for that was the 30th of September. All right, Washington got the plan approved a long time ago, and everybody got your applications and your proposals are in, and they've already been approved by the state, and now they're with FEMA. And so as long as the government doesn't shut down, all FEMA has to do is go, okay, go. And you all can start spending money because it's going to be reimbursed. So FEMA doesn't even have to go out of pocket for this. All they need to do is say yes. So you may have seen on LinkedIn that I've been putting a little pressure on them. They don't respond to me. There is now a second round that's already been activated. And what we talked about last time was using an assessment against the NIST framework to inform your second round of grant requests. And so a whole lot of people said, yeah, let's do that, and all those have been approved. So that's what's going to happen next, and we should talk about when you get those results, you're going to have a finite amount of money, a limited time span amount of money to work with. And what you want to do on the other end of that, you want to pop out, you want to have something that's sustainable. So let's talk about how to do that, because in my view, you need to make a value proposition for your elected officials and everybody, and we can talk about some of the things that are happening out in the world. I'm going to talk about a lot of things that you're going to go, oh, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not a publicly traded corporation. But there are some trends happening that are going to land on all of us, and these are unmistakable. They are happening everywhere. Is this my slide clicker? It is. All right, some trends. Okay, yeah, here's what the SEC says. So the SEC says if you're a publicly traded corporation, you have to file your 10Ks and all of this stuff. Well, they said after, and this is what everybody got glued onto, when you've had some kind of cyber event, if you determine that is going to be material, meaning your shareholders might be affected by this, you have to do a mandatory report 4 days after you determine that materiality. And everybody said, whoa, 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 yeah, we can't tell people that. I mean, that's going to reflect badly on us. We might not know the situation, but this is what we ended up with. It's more than that mandatory reporting, though. It's more than you got to file an 8K and say, okay, this thing happened and we need to inform our shareholders and the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's about other things, and one of those is governance. This comes from the wording from the SEC, and I've got some bold in here, and these are the trends that are starting to show up in other places as well. So are you using a third party to help you manage risk? And the way I read that is that's a little bit of a liability safe harbor, right? If you got a third party involved, you can go, well, that's what they told us. This is our risk. Okay. Well, that's kind of a good thing. The board of directors oversight. So local government doesn't have a board of directors, but you have city council, you have county commission. That's essentially your board of directors. They want them involved. Today, there really needs to be representation to the board of directors for somebody about cybersecurity, so that they're actually being informed on this and not, shunting it off to the side and not worrying about it and go, well, that's IT's job. All this is changing. Management's role, okay? So there's a job now for the top of the food chain, nominally the C-suite for a publicly traded organization, right? Okay, here's what credit unions are saying. Hey, something happens, you have to report it publicly. Part of this is a kind of a national trend, which includes something called CIRCIA. Have you heard of this? C-I-R-C-I-A, CIRCIA? I have no idea what it stands for, but what it means is that if you are part of critical infrastructure, you have to do mandatory reporting to the Department of Homeland Security. All right? What's critical infrastructure? Hey, water purification, waste treatment, traffic management, communications for law enforcement, public safety, what you do, right? So this is landing on you too. So that's what credit unions say, right? Here's what Health and Human Services says. And all this is very recent, within the last, 8 months?
8 months,
something,
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. All right? So you got to do this as a risk management issue. Treat it as risk management. Not we're going to buy a bunch of products and put them in place and call it good. There's a process of risk management. And part of that process is when you identify a risk, you need to bubble that up through some governance and say, here's what we suggest we do with this risk that we have identified, right? There's only 4 things you can do: accept it, avoid it, mitigate it through controls, or transfer it through insurance. That's it. So you identify a risk and you say, well, our recommendation is, we make a little investment here and get some controls in place. And that committee, that risk governance, can say, no, we're going to accept that risk, right? And it happens all the time. But that needs to be formal, and there needs to be fingerprints on it from the top of the organization. So having some kind of governance organization within your jurisdictions, this is going to be increasingly important. Set expectation that management will establish cybersecurity risk management framework. Okay? Got to be involved, all right? So this is Health and Human Services, credit unions, publicly traded organizations. Here's what keeps coming up, all right? That last thing I showed you was, isn't that what they call, there's a weird name for it.
Hiccup.
Hiccup, yeah. So that's Health and Human Services called that guide, the Hiccup, the HICP, and it is strongly advocating you need to do a risk assessment against the HIPAA standard every year, and they want you to use the NIST framework to do it, all right? This keeps coming up. Got to do that risk assessment. Got to manage third parties. We all know this. Everybody remembers, or I hope, that there was an episode in Texas a couple of years ago where 19 local governments all at once, ransomware, all at once. Why? Because they went through a third party. There was an MSP that was managing their IT for them. They got compromised and used as the launch pad to get to everybody else. So that ended up being bad.
And on the health side, just happened with timekeeping software. A bunch of hospitals ransomware through timekeeping software.
Yeah, the third party, the unlocked window third party is getting to be a really pervasive problem, right? And then governance, like I talked about. So these are the themes that keep showing up. So it's Homeland Security with CIRCIA, and it's credit unions, and it's the SEC, and it's Health and Human Services, and there are others. So these are the things that are going to be applicable to every one of you. And these can be used to help create the value proposition to convince your electeds that they need to budget for things to make them sustainable after the grant money runs out. All right? Well, let's talk about how we can pull that lever here, okay? So here's the framework right here. Notice that in version 2 of the NIST cybersecurity framework, there's this govern section, which is new, right? Everything is pointing to the same thing. So those of you that did your application for grants and said, Here's our proposal, and we want to get a risk assessment done. All right, well, if we're going to do it for you, and I know that for some of you we are, we're going to do it against NIST Framework 2.0 here, and this govern part is going to be really important. Because this is what you're going to be able to take to your organizations and say, okay, this is what we're going to have to do. You want to say anything else about this?
Yeah, I mean, you took out the pretty slide with the circle. But
yeah, there were too many slides in here.
There were too many slides. So, but I think it's important if you guys
marketing
haven't seen, if you haven't seen the, the official NIST circle, it has identify, protect, detect, respond, recover as the domains, and then govern is a circle on the inside. And I actually think it's a really nice visual of it because governance covers everything. Governance covers everything else. It is an integral part of everything. And I was just having a conversation at breakfast, and I think a lot of electeds, I think a lot of folks, still have this idea of, oh, if we buy Microsoft, everything will be fine. Or, there's one tool that we can buy and everything will be fine. And the complexity of this and the ability to show this, I think, is really important. We have to build an entire security program. It's not one thing. It is an entire program. And one of the nice things we're seeing now, healthcare, credit unions, banks, everything is everyone's being pushed to the same standard and being measured in the same way.
You mean we can't just buy something that calls itself AI and call it good?
Only if it's machine learning.
Oh. Okay. This is happening. Okay. More and more, they are holding the top levels of organizations accountable in this way. And there have been some notable filings coming out of mainly private sector, publicly traded corporations where the C-suite is being accused of negligence. And there is the University of Minnesota and Progress Software and PayPal for negligence, all right? You didn't listen to your security people. You didn't fund this properly. You said IT's got it, we're calling it good, and then they got popped. And when they peek under the covers, they find out there was no governance in place, that the top of the organization was not involved at all, and here come the claims of negligence. And this is what makes CEOs disappear. There's the famous case of this was a long time ago, was Target. And Target had a device in there saying, look at me, something's going on. And they didn't have anybody looking at the alerts coming off their FireEye box. And when they found this out later, the entire C-suite disappeared. Okay, so we can use this. We can use this in creating the value proposition for elected officials to say we need to make this sustainable. The grant money is finite. The program has to live on. All right? And just in case you don't think it applies to the public sector, remember what happened to Dallas? All right? They have bad problem. Dispatch was impacted. A lot of things were impacted. Well, now their own firefighters and cops are thinking about suing the city because they didn't protect their records. So, they got ransomware, but they also had a bunch of records stolen. Well, that ends up being out there. There are now privacy statutes and ambulance chasing attorneys waiting for something like this to happen so that they can bring in a class action suit. Now, a class action against a local government is kind of dumb. We'd be suing ourselves, right? But those attorneys are out there. So this also applies to the public sector. Okay, so how do you want to end up out of all this, right? You've got this list of stuff you can buy, okay? Here, I've shown this before in kind of matrix format, but if you're doing it right, you got stuff you got to do every day, right? Somebody needs to be doing this stuff, right? You're going to have to keep record. You're going to have to manage incidents that pop up. If there are consultants running around doing things, you got to manage them. Planning to meet all of your quarterly, annual requirements, right? All these are basically, this is kind of the daily battle rhythm of things, right? There's also stuff you got to do on a monthly basis. You need to do a vulnerability scan once a month. You need to review your firewall rules because if you are ever audited, and I know that CJIS, HIPAA, and PCI apply to all of you, when auditors come in, they're going to say, have you reviewed your firewall rules? Can you explain why those rules are there? It's important. when you have vulnerabilities that you're managing, there needs to be some kind of ritual that you go through, because you need to toss those over the fence to the network people or to the desktop people to get them resolved. Some of that stuff happens by itself, Microsoft patches, a lot of it doesn't. So for example, Adobe products all need to be patched right now. Anything with an Android operating system needs to be patched. If your iOS is below 16.6, you need to patch your phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody's got to be on top of all that stuff. There are going to be things that just kind of pop up. We have a project and we need a security review of this, or here's a third party we want to do business with. You know, you're going to have to look at their security papers and evaluate whether they're secure enough to do business with. Right? So here's our monthly stuff, and then on a quarterly basis, you got to get the stuff done that annually has to occur. You have to do an annual risk assessment. You have to do an annual policy review, right? You have to do an annual penetration test, tabletop exercise so that you're practicing your incident response. All this stuff is embedded in that NIST framework. And if you're ever audited, like we voluntarily bring in auditors against, you know, we do a SOC 2 assessment so that we have security papers to show. So we can say, yeah, we're doing all that stuff, right? Going to land on everybody. We're going to have to get a whole lot more serious about this in the public sector, right? You got to fish your employees. So here are the things that need to be done quarterly. So this is kind of where you want to end up, to where all of this stuff is going on and it's being managed, right? A lot of this stuff can be done by bringing in consultants, right? You're not going to hire somebody to be on staff to do a penetration test once a year, right? You wouldn't hire a plumber to be on staff if you had a clogged drain once a year, right? So, I mean, a lot of this is just going to be contracting. And I got PCI and CGIS on there because I know you are audited against that. Everybody enjoys it when the FBI shows up. Okay, so using finite grant funding.
By the way, Mike is always super happy during audits.
Yeah, mine's coming up, and it's... But we'll show you the tool that we use, actually, to collect all of our information, our artifacts that the auditors are going to come looking for, because it's pretty handy. We also have a tool we can give to you all to self-assess against all of this if you want to. Okay, so the grant is finite. We all know that. You can't use the grant to encumber funds for multiple years. You can get a one-year managed service contract, or at least we think so. And I wrote a proposal for one jurisdiction, and Lorden, if you're here, I'm talking about you. And if that flies, you know, we'll see, means you can get a one-year contract for a managed security service. You can't hire, you can't pay employees, not with grant money, and meeting all of these requirements is going to take somebody in your jurisdiction, and likely you, to manage all of this stuff. And a long time ago, we did... I won't tell you for who, but we did an engagement for a city, and we figured that managing all of the things that need to be done, weekly, monthly, quarterly, all that stuff, was about 450 hours a year. So that's a kind of a good thing to keep in mind, because if you're going to budget for something like that and you need to capture the cost of what the management is going to take, it's about 450 hours a year. So how do you selling this? All right, you're going to have to sell this to the elected officials. Insulating the jurisdiction from claims of negligence, class action suits, and these kinds of things that are popping up everywhere, right? Including in the public sector. Hold up Dallas. We don't want to be Dallas. Denial of insurance claims, right? When something happens and the insurance company shows up and they start looking around and they find out that you had made representations that weren't exactly accurate, they are going to deny the claims. And also be careful, because if something does happen and you pick up the phone and call somebody to come in and help with incident response, the insurance company's contract with you says in paragraph 1, call us first if something happens. And if you call somebody else, they may deny that claim. So that's a good thing to know too. Yeah, claims of negligence. I don't think elected officials are going to like being called negligent. So this is how you can sell this. And I hate to say it, but you got to put the scare on them a little bit. All right, some of this stuff is happening. This is a foreseeable event. You can manage this. You can put everything you need into your program, and you can have all of the right technology helping you, and you are secure until your ticket is punched. So You don't want them snooping around, finding out bad things, and then calling everybody negligent. And this is the kind of thing that you can use as part of this value proposition. So, with grant funding, get assessed under a standard of practice. The NIST framework is a perfectly good one. There's, the 20 critical controls from SANS. Some might want to use that. There are other frameworks. You can use your PCI self-assessment. Actually, will work for this. You can use any if your your Human Services Department has ever been audited against HIPAA. You can use those results. Okay, but align yourself with a framework like this. And then you use that, yes, to inform the further grant applications. And now $5.7 million is available now for round 2. All we got to do is get FEMA moving, and everything will be fine.
And you mentioned it earlier, but you're helping people write their grants.
Yeah, if you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, Ralph was on the committee to set up, here's how this application process is going to work. And you got to make sure you align with what the state wants, with what the feds want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so being able to put all that wording in there makes your proposals sail through.
And we're waiting to see, but after FEMA approves it, we'll see if 100% of the grants that we helped write fly through, right?
Yeah, I think so. So address the gaps first, definitely that are aligned with the state plan, right? You want to do what the federal government and the state say. Everybody needs to have this stuff in place. It's good to, if you can, get some kind of managed service to help with the alerts that may blow off at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, so that somebody can put an asset on your network in a little network jail, so that later you can get to it, but it's not going to take your network down in the meantime. So training, exercises, endpoint, multi-factor authentication, everybody knows, right? That's the easy stuff. The programmatics are going to be the hard stuff. And, if you also can talk to your elected officials and say, we want to be exemplary in the way that we do this, because people are going to want to know. Your constituents are going to want to know. And if they can hold you up and say, we are doing this right, you don't want to paint a target on yourself, but you want to have something good to say about your security in your jurisdiction. And you got to let them take credit for it. Okay, so again, with grant funding, consulting engagements, right? You can line out the whole year, get your penetration test scheduled, get your tabletop exercise scheduled, get all this stuff done that needs to be occurring on an annual basis. And it's actually good to bring in somebody who's one of these virtual CISOs to help you set up these programmatics. And if you do this, this is what we can do, is we can create a jurisdiction-specific plan for you. How do we tick off all these boxes? How is this going to be possible here? Right? We can create a plan for that. This risk governance committee, when a consultant comes in and says, we need to set up a committee who's going to adjudicate the disposition of identified risk, the consultant can do that. You guys, we all know this. You can talk till you are blue in the face. But when a consultant comes in and says exactly the same thing that you've been saying for 5 years, they go, oh, okay, right? So setting up that governance committee, that is key, because that's the way to get elected officials and executives' fingerprints on all of this. And when they start to take some ownership, which is being required, everywhere we look, everybody's got to have the top of the organization involved now. And when you start getting their fingerprints on these things, then it's not so hard to get what you need, because now they're engaged, and now they know about negligence. Right? What else? Yes, act as a liability transfer. When you got somebody helping you do this stuff, well, that dude told us. That is a bit of a liability transfer. You probably don't want me saying that.
Probably don't.
Yep. Assist with creating that value proposition, right? So one of these virtual CISOs can actually help communicate this value prop to your elected officials and executives so that they understand what the implications of not doing these things could be, right? This is about risk management. They want to manage their personal risk too. CISOs like Ralph here are all out there shopping around for D&O insurance. You know this, right? Everybody is in this seat is worried about being sued. That's why you got to pull the executives in. So having somebody help you round up your execs and your electeds and put together a committee and get their fingerprints on this. We can help you do that. And then creating the budget request for what the ongoing need is going to be. And again, you're going to have to manage all this stuff. It's probably going to have, 450 hours a year. There are consulting engagements that you can schedule. That's actually pretty straightforward. Once you get all these programmatics in place, then it's all yours to run. All right, so how do we sustain this? So, creating a report of here's how we're doing, and here's how we've improved, right? A strategic report, right? Not necessarily here's how many login failures we got last week. That's very tactical. And, a lot of people, if you start talking about scary Russian cyber, their eyes are going to roll back in their head. But if you hold up and say, here's how we're doing, and look how we're improving, then you give them something that they can say, hey, my jurisdiction is doing well here. We're proud of this. Give them that win. Give your electeds that win. Use public reporting, all right, to reinforce what happens. What I mean by that is, hey, look what happened to Dallas. You should know this, right? And I will always put this stuff in the news blast. What public sector jurisdiction is being sued is one of the favorite things I have to search for when I go through the news. So your eventual budget requests can really be limited to, a couple of ongoing consulting engagements, and then keeping up with that battle rhythm, keeping up with that ritual, right? All right, let's take a look at the vulnerability scan. Hey, there's a new one. Let's figure out if we're going to do something about this. Let's take this to the risk governance committee, give them our recommendation, right? That's just going to be your battle rhythm, and it's not spooky, it's not hocus pocus, it's not hard, especially if you have them involved. So a couple of consulting engagements every year, and then your management is really what we're going to do. And I'm leaving out of this the capital purchases, right? Because this grant is really going to fill in some of the blanks, those capital purchases. And that's really the first thing to do, is address some of the XDR, MFA, all of that stuff. Okay. I'm going to let you talk for a bit.
So you have to find a way to measure your progress. And, you can use pen and paper. I was talking to somebody who does. They keep notes. Mm-hmm. It's not a great way to do it. There's an Excel spreadsheet. And I know many of you already have Mike's Excel spreadsheet, and it's based on NIST CSF 1.1.
Yeah, 1.1.
And we're updating it to 2.0, and It's a great spreadsheet. Mike will walk you through it. If anybody needs it, come ask us. You can fill it out. But it's a spreadsheet, so you just have to keep it updated. And then third is find a governance risk compliance platform. And there are a bunch of platforms out there that do this. It helps you with the standard. It helps you stay updated. And, as all of this came out and we sort of recognized, hey, this is something that our customers are going to need, we went out and built a relationship with a company called CyberSaint that is a GRC platform. And one of the things that we're starting to roll out now, and we'll roll it out next year, is we're going to give it to all of our customers, included in what we do, because you all need it for this. And whether you use ours, whether you use Mike's spreadsheet, whatever, this is something you're going to have to do to be able to report back on your progress, right? I think we've all seen all sorts of cyber risk things on the internet, and, they have weird calculations, and are they believable, and did somebody really save you, $900,000, whatever, right? But if you can visualize for your electeds, and you can visualize for your execs, hey, this is how we're doing against the CSF. And, the one on the right here is a risk register, right? How are we bringing those risks down? Where's our reds? Where's our yellows? Where's our greens? It will be a better way for you all to visualize and to tell the state and to report back on your progress after using that grant money.
All right. So, the example here, you can see on the left the spider chart, and the spreadsheet that we can give you if you want it does this. It creates pie charts and spider graphs so that you can actually set a maturity level that you want to achieve, and it will measure you against that level. And if you do it multiple years in a row, you can see how you can report progress. Here's we have improved, and you can see there, this one shows improvement between 2022 and 2023, and hey, we're doing well. Okay, so here is the NIST framework and the govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, right now, these 6 focus areas. And here's the stuff that we do that fits into all of those. And I don't really want to say too much about that because you all know us.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to dive into a couple things here. So, you know, we get a lot of questions from folks about, okay, you know, what should I actually do to align with it? What do I need? You know, as you look at that govern, you know, one of the things that Mike helped folks write a lot of grant proposals for is that policy creation. The next thing down is that is that compliance tool. And like I said, you know, we've responded to this by including one, that VCSO engagement Mike talked about. You have to get that risk assessment, right? For a lot of folks who and that's the number one thing that you helped people with, is get that risk assessment. We talked about the vuln scanning, the third-party management, the user training, the tabletop exercises. And I want to take a minute here to talk about the detection and the response, because we're also responding to this by updating our platform and making sure that for our customers, our managed customers, we're updating our platform to open XDR. We're using an industry-leading platform, and these are all things we're rolling out in the next few months in 2024. We'll have expanded capabilities through integrations with ML and Graph API. We're enhancing our reporting and giving folks direct access to that reporting and to logs. And for our advanced users, direct access to the investigations. And it works for on-prem, for cloud, for IoT, OT. And we'll have significantly better detections in those places. And we're doing this to support all the cities and counties in Washington and beyond, because we know, of course, you're evolving, and at the same time, the threats are evolving. So updating the platform quite a bit, and you'll see that from us in the coming months. And you know what it is you know, a robust platform with hundreds of engineers behind it who've been working on it for years to support our operations here in Washington.
Yeah, and one other little secret is there's a AI startup in Seattle, and we're working with them to do artificial intelligence training for packet capture analysis, which is working out fabulously. And today, even we can submit a presumed phishing message to their ingest and get an answer back in seconds about what this is, what it's doing, and to very quickly solve the problem of, I don't trust this message, I got to get somebody to look at it. So this is exciting stuff coming. Okay, where are we at? I think we're coming down. Here's where we are. So we got about a little more than 10 minutes left. I'm perfectly happy to give everybody some time back. I need a little more hydration myself. But if anybody has any questions, so let me just summarize. So round 1 of the grant already occurred. Everybody's written their proposals and their applications. It's all been adjudicated by a state committee and sent off to FEMA, and we're waiting for them. Use that. If all you wanted was controls, you say, we need multi-factor authentication, go get multi-factor authentication, go get that stuff. But all of these other things, when we start talking about the second round of the grant funding, to get your program to the point where it is sustainable in the absence of grant money, right? You're gonna have to bust out some budget eventually, right? You're going to have to do a penetration test every year. You're going to have to bring in somebody to help you with a tabletop, or conduct it yourself even every year. Right? Some of this stuff is going to cost a little bit of money. It's not going to be bad. The way to make that sustainable, in my view, is to involve your elected officials and your executives and get their fingerprints on this, because the thing you're supposed to do is have governance in your organization around risk management. And when you can involve them and bring them in and hand them a win by saying, here's how we're improving, right? They are going to be engaged. And that's how you can make this sustainable, right? So that's kind of the point we wanted to land on. Now, does anybody have any questions?
Hi. Over here. Sorry.
Oh.
It's not really a question, but I know ACCIS is going to provide these slides, but I have a presentation to leadership, and I'm hoping that you'll provide these slides and the Excel spreadsheet to your customers soon.
We give it to anybody who wants it.
Okay.
Right? If you're one of our managed customers, you get access to the GRC platform, which is real handy.
Thank you.
In fact, I will go sit over at our booth with my laptop, come over, and I will hit forward.
Yep.
I do have a question from the virtual audience over here at the AV table. Will NCSR results count towards your internal risk review?
They can, but the NCSR, the National Cybersecurity Review, is a light touch, and it's also a self-assessment. Self-assessments are very often aspirational. And so you can use that because it is a framework, but it is intended to be able to, those results all go to the Department of Homeland Security. So the reason for that is because DHS wants to have data that they can look at so that they can see trends across local government. That's really what the point of the NCSR is. It's better to use the 20 critical controls, the results of your PCI audit, and for most of you, that's probably a self-assessment too. Again, if Health and Human Services has ever been audited against HIPAA, those results can be used. Some of your ACCIS audit results can be used. But in a pinch, if you have the NCSR results, sure, line up with that. That was a good question. Marty.
Hey.
We agreed last night you were going to take it easy on me.
Yeah. I'm going to draw from what you said and not throw anything too weird.
Thanks.
So you mentioned a GRC tool. Could you describe key features,
Sure.
elements, how we're going to use it,
Sure.
how it's going to be valuable? Thank
Okay.
you.
So it is, GRC, governance risk compliance. This is a way to not only assess whether or not you have required controls in place, but also to designate where the artifact is that proves it. So you are saying, so for example, we know that for us to be able to compete in the market today with all of these trends that I showed you that are happening, right? We are going to have to line up with StateRAMP. We're going to have to line up with CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification, because some of our customers do business with the Department of Defense. So I use this tool myself. And so, it's a whole bunch of controls, and you have this in place. Yes, 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 yes. There's also a place where you can explain, here's where the artifact is, etc., so that when it comes either audit time and you need to produce artifacts to prove that you have the controls in place like I do every year, and now I'm probably going to have to do it 3 times a year. Stick a pencil in my eye, but you've got to be done. It makes it go really quickly, and it produces reports that say, here's your maturity level, here is how you've improved over last year, things like that. And so it's this one-stop shop, and you're always managing this, so it's always current. You can always produce a report that says, here's where we are. You fix something, you go fix it in there, you've improved. And so over the years, as you use this platform, you will be able to very crisply show how you have improved over time. And again, if you're doing it for PCI, for example, the auditors come in, snappity, snappity, snap. Right? And a lot of it is about where are the artifacts, because when you really get audited, you can't just say, we do this. You have to prove it. That answer your question? Okay.
And I'll add one thing. I know one organization, non-local government, that's using it for their cyber insurance. So, cyber insurance gives you a list of somewhere between 10 and 300 questions.
Right.
It's small range. And so they're using it to answer those questions, and knowing that the first thing that happens if you have a breach and you have insurance is, well, that, everything you said in that questionnaire was a self-assessment. So are these things true? And, being able to have the sources ready right at your fingertips when you're in the middle of, the worst day of the year because you've had a breach, you're trying to figure out what's going on and you're dealing with an insurance person on the phone with you saying, hey, can you verify this? It's all there at your fingertips.
Other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much.